Hello and welcome to our March 360 presentation. I'm Curator of Education Anna Smith, and today it's my honor to introduce artist Iván Navarro. As I'm sure you all know, we in Dallas are fortunate to be home not only to the largest urban arts district in the United States, but also to NorthPark Center, a stunning testament to the successful marriage of aesthetics and commerce as envisioned by our common founder, Raymond Nasher. If you've been to NorthPark recently, you may have encountered Iván Navarro's monumental work, This Land Is Your Land, a series of 3 elevated wooden water towers that reveal neon words and images reflected infinitely to those who pass underneath. A synthesis of American folk and sleek post-minimal style, the work is a statement on the political and personal experience of immigration that is both sculptural and performative, enticing visitors to interact, linger, and consider. Navarro's work has been exhibited worldwide with recent shows in New York City, Paris, London, Istanbul, Rome, and Jerusalem, and in 2009 he represented Chile at the 53rd Venice Biennial. His work is held in the public and private collections of the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden, Virginia Museum of Fine Arts, Fonds National d'Art Contemporain, Towner Contemporary Art Museum, LVMH Collection, Saatchi Collection, Martin Z. Margulies Warehouse, and Centro Gallego de Arte Contemporánea. We're so fortunate to have him with us here today. I'll ask you to join me now in welcoming Iván Navarro.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. I'm very glad to be here. This is an amazing opportunity to be able to present my work here in Dallas. And I would like to give a special thank you to Nancy Nasher for her support, and David Haminsher, sorry, I can't pronounce his last name very well, for your amazing support and energy that you give me to do this presentation and present my work here. Plus my thank you to the curator, Jeremy, for also helping them in this presentation, which is will be a very important moment for me to do this here, because it's a way to introduce the work to an audience, to a new audience, and to an audience who is historically interested in contemporary art, which is Dallas. An amazing city to present art, and it already has a knowledge and a background of what's contemporary art and how it works especially in the public areas, which is one of the things that it took my attention the first time I came to Dallas, like how many important pieces are in the public area and for people to enjoy. So I would like to start my presentation with this introduction. It will be a brief introduction to everything I've done, kind of. I'll try to do like a very compressed presentation. But this is one of my first pieces, or one of the first kind of experimentation or research that I started back in I would say 1992, and I think everything my research of my studies about art and especially light in relation to art started with these pieces, and they were photographs. And so I was interested in working with photographs just because the idea of the light and how to work with this device, with the camera, and also making a reference to the idea of using light. So when I was living in Chile, I'm from Chile. Sorry, I didn't say that, but I'm from Chile. I was born in 1972, and I grew up there. And I grew up in Chile during kind of social complicated times, because it was the dictatorship ruled by Pinochet. And I lived through the whole period of the dictatorship in Chile, from 1973 to 1989. So I lived the whole dictatorship in the country. And later, in 1997, I moved to New York, where I live now. But when I went to art school, I was doing the regular curriculum like everybody else, but at the same time I was doing these other works that were my own specific interest about different things that weren't specifically related to the art school. So I was taking photographs to albinos, and because when I was growing up when I was little, when I was in Chile, I was always interested the way the natural light affected albinos. It just was something that was very interesting to me. So when I went to art school, and I realized that there was something that it was something important to me as a project, I decided to follow albinos in the street and ask them if they could be photographed. So this is one piece I made and it says in Spanish, "Confía en tu vecino," which means trust your neighbor. And then other experiments were to ask them to paint themselves. And the whole idea was to understand how albinos didn't have any specific colors related to any specific race. And that's how I started my exploration about how light or the color of light gives you a specific identity, either as a person or as an object. So, and then during the same period, I also started making these works that were exploration of how to use the electric energy that was already given in a specific room. This was my degree show when I was a student in 1996, and the idea of the show was to go into the room and use only the existing materials that were available in the space. So what I did was I took apart the whole electric system, and I reinstalled it in this way. So if you see the fish that are vertical are connected to electricity in their mouth. So, and then moved to New York in 97, as I said. But it took me about 7 years to make this piece and understand what exactly I wanted to make in New York, what exactly I wanted to show, how to be connected to the scene in New York, how to be or to the local scene, how to also make a difference to the perception of my work in that scene. So what I did was I make this piece, which is a direct reference to the idea of the use of the electric chair here in the U.S. This piece was specifically made about the use of the electric chair in Florida, and if you can see the seat has a print, and the print are all the people that were electrocuted in Florida during the 20th century, from 1924 to 2001. So this is basically how I started working in New York towards a very political direction, but at the same time using formal aspects that were coming from minimalism, specifically from Dan Flavin. So one of the ideas, or one of the things that were interesting to me, was to how during minimalism social content was mostly removed from the content of the pieces. So what I wanted to do was to bring that content back. And I made this a second electric chair, but this one was connected to the history of industrial design. Because when I was doing research about the electric chair, I discovered that basically, electric chair is one of the first pieces of modern furniture invented in the 19th century, and which was the beginning of the understanding how to mass produce industrial design. But what's ironic is the electric chair is, for me, is the first piece of modern furniture, because it contains two aspects of modern furniture, which is an improvement of the lifestyle in an ironic way, right? And the use of technology, the new technologies. In that case, is the use of electricity. So what I made was a connection between the idea of modern design and Dan Flavin and the design of the original chair that I reproduced, which is Gerrit Rietveld from Holland, and the chair, red and blue chair from 1918, which is actually known as the beginning of the mass production in industrial design. Rietveld, when he designed the chair, the original chair, the wooden chair, he used existing pieces of lumber to make the chair. So all the pieces of lumber that he used were ready-made pieces of wood taken directly from the lumber yard, and he based his design on the existing size of pieces of wood. So what I thinking about that logic, what I did is I took the standard sizes of fluorescent lights, and I rebuilt the chair. And what was interesting that it fits exactly in the same proportion. So meaning that the original lumber that Rietveld used was made in exactly in the same proportion that later the fluorescent lights were made. So that's how I went to study these other designs that are the Olympic iconic figures invented by Otto Eicher for the Olympics, in the Olympic Games in 1972, where he designed these figures that would represent all the different sports based in the human figure. And the human figure was also at the same time based in the Renaissance studies of the ideal proportions of the men. And then what was also interesting, that why these figures also fit exactly in the fluorescent lights, following exactly the same proportions. So and then somehow there is a connection between these fluorescent lights that also fits the proportion of a resting chair, a beach chair, and this, and then this, which is a copy of a shopping cart. So this project was in 2004, The first electric chair is from 2002, 2001, and the Rietveld chairs are also from 2004. This piece came later in 2009. But this piece is particularly important to me because it was the first time that I added a video to the sculpture, and I make a project that is the video and the sculpture go together as a one piece. In this case, I added a soundtrack to the video, so it wasn't just the documentation of the video, it was also the content and the narrative that this video had, and the song that goes with the video is a Mexican corrido that talks about a person who doesn't have a place to die because the government have taken everything from him. So the only thing that he can do is to wander around and hopefully at some point find a place where he can finally die. This is another piece similar in that logic, and it's a wheelbarrow, and it also goes with the video. But this piece made me remember the early experiments with albinos, because this is a sculpture that goes also with a song and a video, but the video talks about a person who goes back to his hometown and nobody recognizing him because he keeps changing his identity and keep changing his colors. So people are always confused about his identity. So what he does in the video, he goes with the wheelbarrow, and every once in a while he changes the color of the piece, and he keeps going, but he never is always moving and always changing the colors. Then around the same time, this is 2006, I think. I made the first pieces with experimenting with neon, which is different than fluorescent light, because fluorescent light you can only use standard sizes that you basically buy in a hardware store. Where neon, you can custom make the shape of the light and create any shape you want. So I was experimenting with mirrors and light, and by making this sandwich, which is one, here. You see there is like a join, or like a one layer. So this part here, this layer shows where is a regular mirror, just the most common mirror. And then you have all this light, and then on top of the whole piece, there is another mirror called one-way mirror. And it's the same mirror that is used mostly in police station to interrogate people. And so people can see from one side, but you don't see from the other side. So it's a very simple optical trick or optical device that makes, just with the word me, to turn into we, and me again, we. So it's the only thing real neon piece is what it says me there. Oh, sorry. Here. And everything else is a reflection. Everything else is illusion. And that was conceptually was very important to make this piece, because it shows the idea of the reflection, the opposition, also metaphorically the idea of positive and negative. So this piece brings many concepts together that I was working with mirrors and lights. I went back to Chile in 2007 to do my first solo show after I left. So I called the piece "Donde Están," which means "Where are they?" And this is a very everybody knows this sentence because it's connected to the idea of the people who were disappeared by the dictatorships in Latin America. So the same thing, "Donde están," is used in El Salvador, in Argentina, in Bolivia, in Uruguay, in Chile. So when you say "Donde están," it directly refers to the idea of the victims of dictatorship. So I made this brochure and the flashlight, the red flashlight you see, for people to see the information inside in the darkness, because with this brochure, people would go inside a dark room, and inside of the brochure, you wouldn't find the information about the victims, but you would find information about the victimizers. Because there are still many people who worked during dictatorships in Latin America who haven't been judged by the court, and they're still free. And I decided why to keep making art about the position of being a victim. Why not to attack directly to the victimizers? So what I did is, inside this brochure, there is a little, I selected around 500 people, all from Chile, all people that were connected to the dictatorship in Chile, from secret police, from the army, from police, from many institutions that would support the dictatorship and made people disappear or kill people or etc. or any human rights abuses. So the idea was people would enter this big, large space, dark space, with the flashlight and with the brochure, and reading inside a little biography of each one of these persons, like very short biography, like a 5 lines. But inside the room, on the floor, people had to enter through a ramp, so they weren't able to touch the floor, to walk on the floor, because on the floor they were written as a crossword puzzle the names of all those people that were connected to the dictatorship. So the idea was for people to find them with the flashlight, and also once they find it, they can look in the brochure and see their biography. In 2009, I presented my work at the Venice Biennial. This is the installation, and it's a series of. There are 3 different pieces here. The one at the back is an installation of 13 doors that is connected to the work of Ellsworth Kelly, the Spectrum 5, and then if you can see that this cylinder here is similar to the piece Mi Oui, but it says bed, and you can also see bed repeated infinitely towards the ground. So the idea is it's not a bed anymore. It's a vertical bed. And then this other piece right here is another piece, part of the series of the cards with the videos. And what it basically does, it talks about the idea of not having a nationality. So this is basically this piece also talks about the idea of the lack of home, basically, metaphorically, because it's the idea of bed. And then the doors here, they are connected to this Ellsworth Kelly piece, but the idea that they talk about the idea of the flatness, similar to Ellsworth Kelly piece. But in this case, there are tunnels that they show you a way to exit, but it's also like an impossible thing because it's all an illusion with mirrors. So to make the story short, the idea was to make a piece with a narrative of the idea of nationality, where I had to present basically a piece that would talk about Chile, because I was invited to represent Chile in the National Pavilion. So it was a way to make a critique of that idea of why art has to represent a national culture, when I think art can be more complex than that. Doesn't have to have such an easy read. So that's when I went to work with the idea of the skyscrapers, which is a completely different idea than I've been talking until now. And you might wonder why, I mean, like, what's the connection of the skyscrapers and this piece? But I took, as I was interested in the idea of modern furniture, I'm also interested in modern architecture. And this series of works are skyscrapers that are in different cities in the world. And this one, for me, one of the most iconic is the floor plan of the Empire State Building. So my idea was to play again with mirrors, but creating the illusion of the height of the building. So this is a building in Dubai, and this is a building in China. And there is a series of 15 different buildings. In 2010, I made this other piece, which talk more about the idea of control with lights and with electricity. This was made for the Armory show in New York at the Paul Kasmin booth. And so when the gallery offered me to do a solo show at the booth, I decided to make this piece that would completely change the circulation of the fair. So instead of inviting people inside inside the booth, the idea was to not letting anybody inside the booth. And in a way, playing with the idea of emptiness, and by making the viewer think that if the space inside is really empty or is full of content, in a way, metaphorically. And so it looks empty, but it's not really empty. And the light was also very important to make it very bright, and you would be very affected by this piece when you walk around, not just but it means, but also visually. And then this is another idea of the fence, but more in this case connected to the fences that usually go on windows, and that creates the illusion that is a curve, but it's completely flat. So instead of closing the space, it gives you the idea as if it were opening the space. And then this is another piece made with the same idea of the fence, but this is with mirrors, and it gives you the idea of that the fence is an endless fence. So this is very important for me to show this project, because it shows you how I always try to find different ways of making with the same shape or with the same idea try to find different results and try to develop the same idea from different points of view. In a way, it's sort of, I always think that it's a way to criticize my own process of work. This is another work, another series that where they are connected to the idea of underground tunnels. And this was a piece made in Rome, and that was the idea was to be connected to the local history during the Second World War, where many Jews escaped to Rome and they were hidden underground in the catacombs. And so I made this piece that is called Nacht and Nebel, which in German means fog and night. And it's where the Nacht and Nebel, where the NN was the beginning of when, in history, when people who were against the establishment were called NN, because it came from this Nazi system of extermination that was called Nacht and Nebel. And then later was taken to South America also as NN, but in South America, since they didn't know German, or I don't know why was this connection. They always, I grew up knowing that NN meant no name, because it was related to the idea of the people that were disappeared and lost their identity because they were never able to find their bodies. But this piece was specifically made about the history in Rome, in Italy, and it was connected to this moment in history where many Jews were killed inside the catacombs. So I made a piece with bricks that would suggest the idea that it's the continuation of the catacombs. And this one, it says odio, which means hate. And I made a performance with an actress who would walk around the gallery and would take different positions against the sculptures. This is another series that were based in the Joseph Albers squares. It's because when I went to art school, I learned the theory of colors that Albers invented. So I created this series of works that are with mirrors and neons, and they basically similar to the idea of Ellsworth Kelly's paintings, where everything is about the flatness of the pieces and the combination of colors. So I instead of working with the flatness, I'm working with the depth of the sculpture. And this is one of my latest work that is working with instruments and how an instrument kind of suggests a sound. So I've been working with words, text that would also represent the sound that this piece probably make. So it says bomb, and it says all around the piece inside, bomb, 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 bomb. Now at the same time, bombo in Spanish means a kick drum, which is the size, the shape of this drum. This is a different piece. It's a sound work that it's a collaboration with another artist in Chile who is also German, and he's an electronic music artist. And we used a march, a military march, but we deconstructed the march. It's the Raditsky, and we took it because it was the favorite military march that Pinochet loved. So we made a sort of like an homage to him, and we completely destroyed the march, and we put the sound inside this tire. So we turned the tire into a music room, so people were able to enter the tire, and the tire. This piece was made in Chile 3 years ago. The tire it comes from a truck, the mine trucks that they work in copper mines. And as you probably know, copper is the biggest industry in Chile, and it's basically the biggest natural resource that the Chilean economy is based in that natural resource. And this is my last piece I've made. I was finished in January this year, and it's a mobile, similar to Calder's pieces, Calder's mobile, but it's made out of traffic lights. So the idea is to understand and work with the idea of control that the traffic lights are for, and but try to, since the piece was going to be indoors, was to isolate them from their usual use or functionality and take them indoors and create a completely different space, a completely different experience, and to make the viewer to kind of like play with the knowledge that we have about traffic lights, because it's such an ordinary object that we see everywhere, and it gives you orders, and we know how to act in front of them. But in this case, you didn't have to act that way inside the museum, but they were made as a mobile, so they had more like a random movement, not the one direction position that they have in the street. So people were invited to even push the traffic lights and play with the sculpture as a mobile. And then, as you can see, at one point all the lights were green, and then yellow, and then red, and then again. So the idea was to expose people to the green light for at least 1 minute, and then to the yellow light for 1 minute, and then to the red light for 1 minute. So it was more about the experience of the light and the perception of this visual perception of the light, rather than what we already know about what green, yellow, or red means in our culture. So now we're going to go to a different thing. Specifically to the project that we have here at the shopping center. So I'd like to explain how everything started in maybe like 3-4 years ago, when I was thinking about making this piece, and also where the piece was going to be shown for the first time, which was at the Madison Square Park in New York. So it was the idea of the wanderers as you remember in my previous pieces, the shopping cart or the wheelbarrow, even the albinos, the way I was following albinos in the street, was connected to the idea of the wanderers, that people were wandering the city, finding a way to survive. So I found this lithograph from 1897 by Theodor van Rieselberg, and they are wanderers. It represents a family that was basically looking for work in the US. So that idea, that very simple idea, that, and also the people are not facing they are not facing us. They're giving their back to us. It's a very complicated picture for me. And then I was thinking about in Chile, when I was growing up, the government during dictatorship was supporting the idea of sending people to the south, and they called them colonos, like colonies, and sort of like a colonizing the south where there was nobody, and it didn't work out. Like nobody stayed, so they were given like land. They had to, this water tank kind of represents that, because it was this idea of trying to set up a house or a compound or something that would create a community in the south of Chile. I'm also a record collector, and I had this record for a long time, and this one too. And it's also about the same idea. And but this is something that is particularly about the United States. But at the same time, this kind of music is very influential to the folk music in Latin America during the 60s, especially because the work of Joan Baez or Pete Seeger or even Bob Dylan. But there is this figure, which is Woody Guthrie, which is here, who is the main influence to all of them, but it's never been recognized as an influence in South America. So that became very interesting to me, because why these people are recognized as an influence in South America and not him? There is a gap, an interesting gap there. So I began interested in knowing more about the work of Woody Guthrie and the hobos. At the same time, knowing and thinking about the idea, as I said before, the colonies and the wanderers. So, and then another water tower appeared, which is the classic water tower that are in New York. And learning more about the water towers, I made a research. And during this time, during the Great Depression, people were going from town to town looking for work. And one of the signs that would say maybe there is work in this city was a water tower, because the water tower had water and had basically a community that was saving this water for something. So it was as a symbol or about there is something going on here, there is life here. So I start thinking and working with the water tower and thinking about the symbolic image of the water towers in New York that are all on top of buildings. And it's such a touristy attraction. So was also like this idea of how during the Great Depression was an attraction of people that were coming to a new city, and then in New York this time it's also about an attraction of people coming to a city in a different way, of course. So I decided to take the water towers and create my own water tower, but based in the real ones. And I made drawings and studies, and the idea the structure can be inside and here. So I worked with an architect doing all these drawings. So and then I found the lyrics of the song "This Land Is Your Land" that you were listening before. And then I studied the lyrics. That's what I usually do when I make a project. I usually base my work in connection to a song. So I use the song as an inspiration, as a poetry. But in this case, I found very interesting that at the end of each paragraph, the paragraph ends in me. And then I made a collection of different words that could be related to the song. So I took Éxodo, me here, echo, a ladder, the hobo, bed, different things. And this is because all these words can be reproduced in a box, like in a mirror box. So it can be reflected endlessly, always keeping always keeping the direction of the word, so you can always perfectly read Éxodo, echo. The only one that is different is this one, me, that when you put it against the mirror, it turns into we. So I made a design with neon, which is a specific font that is actually called neon font. And I designed the word me, and I placed it inside the container. And I also chose a ladder and the word bed that also connects you with the idea of a home. And that is also a word that I had used before in the Venice Biennial project. And then I made the water containers out of wood. The wood is cedar wood, and it's exactly the same wood that is used in the original water tanks in outdoors in the city that contain water. So this is a view in the studio of the constructions of the water tanks. And then I made a printout in paper in real size of the neon that was going to be inside. So I had to try the size. And then this is the construction of the roof. And then this is the final drawing that I submitted to the park. And I said, okay, after I did all the research, I said, I think this is the project. I think this is how it's going to be, and I would like to place it this way. And it's going to be in this specific area of the park that the park had already told me where I could work. And then end up being this piece. Unfortunately, we had to install this day the way you see it now, and it was very hard. But it was very interesting to learn how to work under the snow. But people came anyway, and it was really nice and very interesting to see how the pieces would in a way would invite people, because from far away, like here, you can see that they could be like regular sculptures, almost like a sculpture in a plinth, in a platform. But the idea is the piece doesn't have just one way to see it, one point of view. The piece also has the underneath the piece, where for me is like 50% of the work, and that's where you see the reflection and the words in neon, and here again, here is the me that started with the lyrics of the song of Woody Guthrie, and then the bed, the idea of a home that is also connected to the work I made in 2009 for the Venice Biennial, and then a ladder that, of course, is a poetic and metaphoric idea of progress. And then 6 months later, the place came to a different context, which is also very interesting, which is an indoor context. What's interesting to me, which is something that happens only in this space, that you can see the pieces from far away, underneath, and also from above, which is something that you weren't able to see at the park. So I think that's the end. Yes. So thank you so much. So I think now we can do some questions if you like. If you have any questions, go ahead.
Are you going to start doing stuff with LEDs?
I do work with LED, but I just don't like it. I don't like LED. Yeah. So every time I use LED, I use it as usually as a background light. So you only see the light. But the good thing about LED that is very strong. I just don't like the way it looks. But we'll see. Yeah. Yes.
I thought it was really interesting how you noticed that fluorescent lights have the same dimensions as objects. Do you have any theories on why that might be?
What? Say that again?
Oh, you know how you noticed that the fluorescent lights have the same dimensions as objects?
Yes.
Do you have
In the figures,
Do you have any theories on how that, like why that's like that?
I don't know. No, it's just interesting to understand. I mean, I've been researching about, but I haven't found any research about that connection. But I think my theory is they are connected to the domestic world. So somehow they are. I don't know why they're also connected to the body proportion. Maybe because they are connected to the domestic world, so they have to fit in your house. I don't know, But it's very interesting how we are surrounded by these pieces that are in our same proportion. I wonder if it's probably. I hope so. Yes.
One wife and I were in Chile some years ago, and we were very much impressed with how much the time of Pinochet was there and how it affected the society so much. And you mentioned this in the very beginning. In what way did you feel like this has affected your works?
Well, if you see the work, I'm very interested in the idea of surveillance and how light is related to the idea of controlling circulation, controlling your perception. I think all comes from that. Like, I remember when I was growing up, there were blackouts every other day. And they were always saying that the blackouts were were mostly created by the government in order to control people, to make people stay at home. so they wouldn't create any riots, any protest, any disorder. So that's one of my influences, to the way light affected the ordinary life when I was growing up. We had another at home when I was growing up. We have like a radio with battery, because the blackouts, they had to be with batteries, exactly in one place of the house, and it was, nobody could touch that radio, and the radio had always, if you use it during the day, you always have to put it back exactly where everybody knew, which was on top of the fridge. So when the blackout came, you can go in the darkness and go and find the radio and turn it on and listen to the news and know what's going on. Same thing with a flashlight, with candles, and with matches. Yeah.
Do you do your own work in neon, or do you get someone else to actually execute it? And if you do, is it difficult, because neon's a dying art? And was it difficult finding someone to?
Well, I work with a neon shop in New York, and they what's funny? They mostly work for artists, because artists are the few people that are still working with neon, and they're specialized in working with artists. I mean, they also do like a work for Las Vegas or casinos and things like that, but they do specialize working with artists. And I don't know how to do it myself. It's like it's a craft. You have to blow glass, heat it, yeah. Anybody? Yeah.
Yes, I heard from your book that in addition to light, you have a deep interest in words, which is definitely also reflected in your work. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's very simple. I read the dictionary all the time, because I love learning English or any other language. So, and then I became interested in working with words, because I was so close to this idea of learning language and understanding the different meanings of language in different contexts, specifically. Because you can say different words that are, I mean, I'm sure many people speak Spanish here. When you, like, the classic joke is when you say, I'm embarrassed, right, in English. Doesn't mean I'm embarazado in Spanish, that means pregnant, right? So, so to learn all those little subtleness of language.
I have another one for you. Fueros, like leathers, means leather here, and in Spanish it's naked.
There you go. But it's close. But yes, I think that it comes from there. Also, during the time I was going to art school in Chile, the use of text and conceptual art was a very important thing to learn during that time. So that's also an influence. Yes.
When you did the tower, water tower with bed in it, how come you chose to start with the bed cap cut off instead of going with a full bed?
Well, because the idea of when you to cut the word in half, the idea is to use the container to complete the word. So it's in a way it's a device that plays with the idea of illusion and representation, and it makes the word bed to be completed, but only in the illusion. So that's why they are cut half, and the half doesn't fit inside the container. So the only way to make it complete is by putting a mirror on top, and then you can see it. And then it's in the fictional side, as I call it. Thank you. More? Yes?
The water tower, I really didn't understand why you placed a mirror.
At the bottom. Yeah.
One mirror goes at the bottom on top of your head, and then the lights, and then another mirror. So it's, it's like one mirror, the lights, another mirror. Yeah? More. Yes, thank you. Yes. Thank you.